My name is Haley Foster. I'm 31 years old. And the night my sister looked me straight in the eyes and accused me of stealing her diamond necklace was the night I finally understood how much my silence was worth inside my own family. She said it in front of everyone, like she had been waiting for that moment for a long time. Her voice cut across the backyard, sharp enough to stop every conversation at once. She didn't sound confused. She didn't sound hurt. She sounded certain. She said I had been near her room, that I had been acting strange, that there was no one else who could have done it. And the worst part was not even her lie. It was the way my parents immediately turned toward me with that look people get when they have already decided what they want to believe. I stood there trying to process the accusation while she kept talking, building her little case piece by piece. And all I could think was that the necklace should not have meant anything to me, but it did. Because the necklace she was accusing me of stealing was something I had secretly paid for myself. For years, I had been the one carrying this family when no one else could. I had paid bills that never should have become my responsibility. I kept sending money, fixing problems, and showing up with a smile because I thought that was what family loyalty looked like. I thought being dependable would protect me. I thought sacrifice would earn trust. I was wrong, because when my sister decided to call me a liar, the people I had worked the hardest to protect were ready to believe her almost immediately. What happened next did not just expose one lie. It tore open everything I had been too loyal to see. Growing up in the suburbs of Minneapolis, I learned early that being dependable was not just something people praised you for out loud. It was something they quietly expected from you over and over until it became your entire identity. By the time I was old enough to understand what was happening inside our house, my father's business had already started collapsing under the weight of debt and shrinking orders, and my mother was doing everything she could to keep working through constant pain and exhaustion. Money became the thing no one wanted to talk about. Even though it sat at the center of every decision, I saw the overdue notices before anyone admitted they were there. I heard the midnight arguments through my bedroom walls. I noticed the groceries getting cheaper, the vacations disappearing, every small emergency feeling like it might be the final thing that knocked us down. My sister, Savannah, barely seemed to notice any of it. Or maybe she noticed and simply learned that the rules somehow never applied to her. She still got better clothes, newer phones, extra cash for weekend nights out, and all the soft excuses parents make when they do not want their youngest child to feel deprived. I was the one who learned to need less. I was the one who learned to solve problems before anyone asked. By my late 20s, I had built a stable career and a life that looked successful from the outside. What no one knew was how many pieces of that life I had quietly handed back to my family. What started as temporary help had turned into a system no one wanted to name. I paid the mortgage when my parents could not keep up. I covered utilities, helped with groceries, sent money for unexpected expenses, and took care of costs that kept piling up faster than anyone could manage. When Savannah started college, I became the invisible force behind that tuition. Books, fees, random emergencies, even the lifestyle luxuries she treated like basic needs. She never knew the money came from me. My parents made sure of that. They told me it would be better for her confidence if she believed they still had everything under control. I let myself believe I was protecting my family by staying quiet. But all I was really doing was making it easier for everyone to take my sacrifice for granted. Savannah loved expensive things, especially anything that made her look important. The custom platinum necklace with the diamond pendant was one of her newest obsessions, something she said she needed for special nights out and social media photos. My parents acted like they were doing everything they could to give it to her. In reality, the money had come straight out of my account. Just like so many things before it, I remember watching her open it with that small, smug smile, thanking them as if they had moved mountains for her. I stood there smiling for the family photo, knowing I had paid for the very thing that would later be turned against me. And at the time, I still had no idea how carefully that betrayal had already started taking shape. By the next day, the accusation no longer felt like a heat-of-the-moment outburst. It started to feel like a case my sister was carefully building against me. That was what made it so disturbing. Savannah was not acting like someone who had lost something valuable and wanted help finding it. She was acting like someone who already knew exactly who she wanted to blame. That night, my phone lit up with her name, again and again. First, she asked if I wanted to return the necklace quietly before things got worse. Then she said Dad was furious and Mom was falling apart. Then she sent one final message that simply said, "You're making this harder than it has to be." I stared at the screen for a long time, wondering how we had gotten there so fast. The answer came to me in pieces, each one uglier than the last. We had not gotten there fast at all. She had been leading us there on purpose. The next morning, I drove back to my parents' house because some part of me still believed this could be ended face to face. I thought if I looked them in the eyes, if I spoke calmly, if I reminded them of who I had always been, the whole thing would collapse under the weight of its own absurdity. Instead, the moment I walked in, I felt the shift in the room. My mother was at the sink, but she could barely look at me. My father was sitting at the kitchen table with that hard expression he wore when he had already made up his mind and only wanted confirmation. Savannah came downstairs a minute later, holding the empty velvet box in her hand like a trophy. She said she had found it shoved into a storage bin with some of my old things. For a second, I genuinely could not speak. I had not touched those bins in months. They were dusty, buried in the back of the garage. And no one would have found that box there by accident unless they had gone looking for a place to plant it. I told them exactly that. Savannah widened her eyes and pretended to be offended, as if she could not believe I would accuse her after everything. My father cut me off before I could say another word. He said the box had to have gotten there somehow. He said I had been acting defensive since the night before. Then he said, "If you're having money problems, stealing and selling the necklace would at least explain your behavior." That was the moment I realized how little they truly saw me. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of being called broke by the people whose lives I had been quietly funding for years. But the hurt was stronger than the irony. I told them I was not broke. I said I had no reason to steal anything from Savannah. I said someone was setting me up. My mother told everyone to calm down. But she did not defend me. Savannah kept her face carefully arranged somewhere between wounded and righteous, adding just enough doubt at exactly the right moments to push the story further. She reminded them that I had gone upstairs during dinner. She reminded them that I knew the house better than anyone. She said the necklace could have fit inside a coat pocket or a purse. None of it was real evidence. But it sounded convincing enough if you already wanted to believe her. Then my father said the thing that told me I was losing them. He looked right at me and said, maybe people were not always who they pretended to be. If it had come from anyone else, it might have made me angry. Coming from him, it felt colder than that. I had spent years proving myself through action because I thought actions mattered most in a family. I thought consistency built trust. But in that kitchen, one accusation from the daughter they had always protected outweighed every sacrifice I had made without ever talking about it. And as Savannah stood there clutching that empty box like proof of my guilt, I had the sickening feeling that this was only the beginning. She was not trying to find her necklace anymore. She was trying to bury me with it. 2 nights later, my father called and told me to come back to the house because the family needed to settle this once and for all. He did not ask. He did not sound like a man searching for the truth. He sounded like a man preparing for a verdict. When I arrived, I understood immediately what kind of night it was going to be. My aunt was there. One of my cousins was there. My mother sat stiffly on the couch, her eyes swollen like she had spent hours crying. Savannah sat beside her, quiet in that fake, controlled way people get when they want to look like the victim. The whole room felt staged, not like a family trying to understand what had happened, but like a circle of people waiting for me to confess to something I had never done. My father started speaking before I had fully sat down. He said the necklace was still missing. He said too many things pointed toward me now. Then Savannah reached for the coffee table and picked up the empty velvet box again, setting it in front of everyone like a final piece of evidence. She repeated where it had been found, then added another detail I had never heard before. She said one of the branded jewelry pouches had also turned up in the back of my SUV, tucked under a reusable shopping bag. For a second, I thought I had heard her wrong. Then my cousin said, "Maybe we should all go check the car together." So there's no more arguing. I remember standing there in complete disbelief as they walked outside. As if any of this was reasonable. As if humiliating me in my parents' driveway was somehow a fair search for justice. My father held out his hand for my keys. And because I knew refusing would only make me look guilty to people already hungry for confirmation, I gave them to him. He opened the back of my SUV, shifted a few bags aside, and there it was, a soft gray jewelry pouch from the same store Savannah never stopped bragging about. My aunt gasped. My mother covered her mouth. My father turned around slowly with an expression that was somehow worse than anger. It was disappointment sharpened into contempt. I said immediately that I had never seen that pouch before. I told them someone had put it there. Savannah let out a small, bitter laugh and asked how many coincidences I expected everyone to believe in 1 week. The empty box in my storage bin, the pouch in my car, the fact that I had gone upstairs the night the necklace disappeared. She laid it all out so smoothly that if I had not known her my entire life, I might have believed her too. Each piece was weak on its own. Together, in front of a family that had already leaned toward her, they looked damning. What destroyed me then was not even the accusation anymore. It was how quickly everyone accepted the version of me Savannah had invented. Suddenly, I was dishonest. Suddenly, I was jealous. Suddenly, I was resentful, unstable, and capable of doing something ugly for money. No one asked why a woman with a steady career and her own apartment would risk everything over a necklace. No one asked why the person who had always solved the family's problems would choose that exact moment to become a thief. No one asked the questions that mattered because deep down, they were not really investigating. They were relieving themselves of the discomfort of doubt by placing all of it on me. My father said he had spent his entire life trying to raise children with values, and he would not tolerate lying under his roof. Then he looked straight at me and said that if I was going to keep denying it, I could leave and stay gone until I was ready to tell the truth. I turned to my mother because some desperate part of me still believed she would stop him. She did not. She looked broken. But she said I should leave for now and let everyone calm down. Leave for now, as if I was the one who had poisoned the house. As if I was the danger standing in that driveway. Savannah kept her head lowered. But there was something about the set of her mouth that made my stomach turn. She was enjoying this. Maybe not every second. Maybe not in some wild, obvious way. But enough. Enough to keep going. Enough to watch me lose everything and stay silent while it happened. I bent down to pick up my purse from the front seat. And when I straightened, Savannah glanced at her phone. It lasted half a second. Just a flash of light across the dark screen before she angled it away. But it was enough for me to see. Under the collar of her hoodie, I caught the sharp glitter of stones against platinum. The necklace. Her necklace. The necklace she said I had stolen. She had been wearing it right there while my father searched my car. While my mother cried. While my entire family stood around deciding what kind of person I was. In that moment, everything inside me went cold, not hot. Not frantic. Just cold. Because the truth suddenly became clear. This had never been panic over a missing piece of jewelry. Savannah had hidden the necklace. Planted just enough evidence to point at me. and waited for the family to do the rest. And they had. They had done it eagerly. I thought about exposing it right there, screaming at her to pull her collar down and show everyone what she was hiding. But one look around told me exactly how useless that would be. They had already chosen her. Even if I said it out loud, she would deny it. They would say I was desperate. They would accuse me of trying to shift the blame now that I had been caught. So I said nothing. I took my keys back. I got into my car, and I drove away from the house I had helped keep standing for years while the people inside watched me leave like I was the one who had betrayed them. I made it 2 blocks before I had to pull over because I could not see through the tears. I sat there shaking, one hand over my mouth, trying to understand how a family could be built for years on my sacrifice and still collapse the second my sister decided to turn me into the villain. But somewhere beneath the pain, beneath the humiliation, a harder truth began to settle in. This was not an accident. This was not some emotional misunderstanding that would fix itself once everyone cooled down. Savannah had planned this. And the fact that it had worked so easily told me something even worse. I had spent years rescuing people who had never really seen me. The next morning, I did not cry. That part was over. I woke up with swollen eyes, a pounding headache, and a silence in my apartment that felt completely different from the silence in my parents' house. This silence did not suffocate me. It gave me room to think. For the first time since Savannah had pointed at me and called me a thief, I stopped replaying the accusation and started looking at the bigger truth behind it. My sister had lied. My parents had chosen her. But none of it could have destroyed me so deeply if I had not spent years making myself indispensable to people who had never once stopped to ask what it was costing me. So I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started building a spreadsheet that forced me to look at every dollar I had poured into that family. Mortgage payments, utility bills, car insurance, groceries, tuition transfers, credit card rescues, emergency expenses that were never really emergencies, just habits and irresponsibility paid for with my money. Line by line, month by month. It all added up to a number so large, I had to lean back in my chair and stare at the screen. I had spent years telling myself I was just helping them through a hard season. But the season had never ended. It had become their way of life. And I had become the silent system, holding it up. Once that number was in front of me, everything else became easier. I called a financial advisor that afternoon and laid out the entire situation without softening any part of it. She listened, reviewed the records I sent over, and then said something I think I needed to hear from another adult before it could really sink in. She said generosity does not create obligation, especially when that generosity has been met with manipulation, disrespect, and false accusations. After that, I spoke with an attorney not because I wanted revenge in some dramatic courtroom way, but because I wanted absolute clarity. I needed to know where I stood before I took the next step. The answer was simple. My name was not on their mortgage. I was not legally obligated to keep paying tuition. I was not required to maintain anyone's lifestyle, especially after being thrown out of the family like a criminal. As soon as that was confirmed, something inside me clicked into place. My guilt no longer sounded noble. It sounded trained. So I started canceling everything. First, the automatic mortgage payment. Then the utility transfers. Then Savannah's tuition for the upcoming semester. Then the phone plan I had been quietly supplementing. Then the insurance. Then the grocery delivery account my mother loved because it saved her energy. I did not rush. I did each one carefully. Saving confirmations. Taking screenshots. Making sure there was no confusion and no way for anyone later to pretend I had not meant it. By the time I was done, I felt strangely calm. Not cruel. Not joyful. Just finished. Years of being useful had taught me how to solve problems efficiently. And now I was finally applying that skill to my own life instead of theirs. Then, I wrote a letter. It was not emotional. It did not beg them to understand me. It simply laid out the facts. I listed every major expense I had covered, how long I had covered it, and the total amount I had spent keeping their household and Savannah's life from falling apart. Then I wrote the only sentence that truly mattered. Since I have been accused of theft, called a liar, and thrown out of the family home without evidence, all financial support from me ends immediately. I attached copies of the bank transactions and payment confirmations, sealed scoffs everything in an envelope, and sent it off. My phone started blowing up less than 24 hours later. My father called first. He did not sound sorry. He sounded angry and panicked, which somehow made him even more honest. He demanded to know if the letter was some kind of threat. I said no. It was a boundary. He said family did not do this to each other. I asked if family also hid evidence, made false accusations, and threw out the person paying their bills. He went silent for a second, then got louder, saying, "This was not the time for revenge." That word almost made me laugh. Revenge would have been exposing Savannah publicly that night. Revenge would have been humiliating them the way they had humiliated me. This was not revenge. This was me finally stepping out of a system that only worked because I kept accepting my place at the bottom of it. My mother called after that, crying so hard I could barely understand her. She kept saying they did not know, as if ignorance could erase years of what I had carried for them. She asked how they were supposed to manage the mortgage. She asked what Savannah was supposed to do about school. She asked if I was really willing to let the whole family suffer over a misunderstanding. That was the moment I understood how complete their dependence on me had become. Even now, after everything, their first instinct was not to ask how I had survived being accused and cast out. It was to ask how quickly I could start rescuing them again. Savannah's messages were the ugliest. She called me bitter, dramatic, selfish, unstable. Then, when that did not work, she changed tactics and said I was trying to punish everyone because my feelings were hurt. Hurt feelings, as if what happened in that driveway had been some small family argument, not a deliberate attempt to destroy my reputation. I blocked her after that, not out of weakness, but out of clarity. I had spent too many years listening to her wants disguised as needs, and of many years listening to her wants disguised as needs. That night, I sat alone in my apartment again. But this time the silence felt earned. They were scrambling because, for the first time in years, there was no quiet transfer coming in to fix the mess. No dependable daughter stepping in before the consequences arrived. No invisible hand softening Savannah's excess. My parents' denial, and the financial reality none of them wanted to face. I had carried all of it for so long that they had started mistaking my help for their entitlement. Now they were about to learn the difference. And for the first time since my sister accused me of stealing that necklace, I did not feel powerless. I felt like I had finally stopped protecting the wrong people. 3 weeks after I cut everything off, the first crack in Savannah's story came from someone who had no reason to protect me. I was leaving work late on a Thursday when I got a message request from a girl I barely remembered from one of Savannah's campus parties. Her name was Chloe. And I almost ignored it because by then I was exhausted from the drama, the missed calls, and the emotional whiplash of suddenly becoming the villain in my own family. But the way the message started made me stop. She said she had gone back and forth about contacting me. But after hearing Savannah brag in a group chat and then seeing how bad things had gotten at home, she could not stay quiet anymore. My stomach tightened before I even opened the screenshots she sent. In them, Savannah was talking exactly the way I had feared, not like someone who was hurt, not like someone who was confused, but like someone proud of herself. She joked that she had finally gotten me out of the picture, She said our parents were so used to seeing me as the responsible one that the only way to beat me was to make them believe I had been lying the whole time. In another message, one of her friends asked if she had really hidden the necklace herself, and Savannah replied with a laughing emoji and a line about planting enough things for everyone else to do the rest. I read those screenshots 3 times, not because I doubted them, but because seeing the cruelty laid out so casually made me feel sick in a completely new way. The most painful part was not even the confession. It was how small and shallow her reason sounded once it was dragged into the light. Savannah was angry because our parents compared her to me, because I had a stable career, because I did not need to be rescued every week, because my existence made her excuses look weaker. According to Chloe, she had complained for months that I acted like I was better than everyone, even though I had never told her the truth about where her money was coming from. And underneath all that jealousy was something uglier. She had started suspecting that our parents depended on me more than they admitted, and she was afraid that if I ever stopped helping, her comfortable little life would collapse. So instead of growing up, she tried to remove the person holding everything together. She did not just want to hurt me. She wanted to make sure she stayed at the center of the family without ever having to deserve it. I did not send the screenshots to my parents right away. I kept them to myself first. I needed the truth for me before turning it into another family war. But the universe did not wait long to force the issue. 2 days later, my mother called me in a voice so shaky, I barely recognized her. Savannah had been confronted after one of her friends apparently let something slip. And once my father started asking questions, the whole story began to fall apart. First, Savannah denied everything. Then she said the screenshots were just a joke. Then she admitted she had hidden the necklace because she wanted to scare me. Then, finally, the real truth came out. She had hidden it from the beginning, planted the empty box in my old storage bins, and slipped the branded pouch into my SUV when everyone was distracted. She thought that if she made me look dishonest, our parents would stop comparing her to me. What she did not expect was that I would cut off every dollar the moment they turned on me. That part, according to my mother, shocked her more than anything else. She had never imagined I would stop paying. That told me everything I needed to know about how deeply my role in that family had been abused. Once the money stopped flowing, Savannah's life started collapsing faster than anyone was ready to face. Her tuition balance went unpaid, so the university froze her registration for the next semester. The apartment she rented near campus became too expensive once my parents could no longer quietly send her money, and she had to move out before the month was over. The weekend trips stopped. The bar tabs stopped. The constant social media flexing stopped. She sold a stack of designer sneakers first, then a watch she had bragged about for months, then her gaming console. Even that was not enough. My father had to tell her there would be no more rescues. No more pretending. No more last-minute miracles. Savannah took a food delivery job at night and weekend warehouse shifts through a staffing agency. And from what I heard later, she hated every second of it, not because the work was beneath her, but because for the first time in her life, effort and consequences were finally attached to each other. The fallout at home was brutal too. My father had to scramble to keep them from falling behind on the house. My mother cut every expense she could, and the stress visibly affected her health. The relatives who had sat in that living room judging me suddenly went quiet after learning I had been funding half the family's life for years. Some were ashamed. Some were angry that they had been dragged into Savannah's performance. A few called to apologize. My cousin, the same one who suggested searching my SUV, texted me saying he was embarrassed he had not questioned the setup sooner. But the biggest shift happened inside that house itself. For the first time, my parents stopped treating Savannah like the child who could do no wrong. My father told her she had not just lied. She had humiliated the one person who had kept the family standing. My mother told her she could survive illness and financial stress, but she did not know how to forgive what Savannah had done to me. I do not know whether those words changed her in that moment, but I know they were stronger than any punishment money alone could bring by. Savannah had spent years being protected from reality. Now, even the people who used to rush to protect her were forcing her to look straight at what she had become. And that was the strange part. Once the truth was fully exposed, I did not feel triumphant the way I thought I might. I felt steadier than that, colder. Maybe. Clearer. Savannah had finally been exposed. But exposure did not erase what happened in that driveway or the days after. It did not undo my mother's silence, or the accusation in my father's voice, or the way my family found it easier to believe I was a thief than to question their favorite daughter. The truth mattered. Her collapse mattered. But none of it repaired the part of me that had finally learned how dangerous it is to be loved only for what you provide. By the time my mother whispered through tears that they finally knew I was innocent, I had already understood something they were only beginning to face. Losing my money had hurt them. Losing my trust was going to cost them so much more. A week after the truth came out, both of my parents reached out to apologize. And this time, there was no anger left in their voices, only shame. Savannah apologized too. But by then I understood that apologies mean nothing without consequences. And consequences were doing the work words never could. She had lost the easy life she thought would last forever. She was working long shifts, falling behind in school. And for the first time, no one in the family was rushing to shield her from what she had caused. As for me, I did not go back to being the person who kept everyone comfortable at my own expense. I agreed to one limited thing: only I would help cover a small portion of my mother's essential medication directly, through no one else. And only as long as my boundaries were respected. Everything else was over. The experience changed me more than I expected. I focused on my work, rebuilt my savings, and slowly started repairing the part of myself that had confused love with endless sacrifice. I also stopped measuring my worth by how much I could carry for other people. Family was never supposed to mean making yourself smaller so everyone else could remain irresponsible. Love without respect always turns into resentment. And generosity without boundaries always attracts the wrong kind of dependence. What my sister did was cruel. But what it exposed mattered even more. Sometimes the hardest lesson is realizing that protecting your peace is not selfish, it is necessary. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back, let people face the consequences of their choices, and finally choose yourself. I no longer stand outside my parents' door waiting for them to see my value. I built a life where I do not need them to see it. I learned that silence is not the same as peace. That boundaries are not walls, but doors you open for people who treat you well. Savannah lost a lot, not just money and comfort, but the respect of the people who once put her on a pedestal. My parents finally saw the truth. But the truth came late. And it came with a cost. They could no longer tell themselves I was solely responsible for their stability. They could no longer take from me while looking down on me. The biggest change, though, happened inside me. I no longer live with the feeling that I have to prove something to be loved. I no longer confuse generosity with obligation, or service with loyalty. I still help people, but now I help with my eyes wide open. I set limits. I say no when I need to. And I have stopped expecting people who never truly change to change. If there is one thing I want anyone going through something similar to understand, it is this: you can rebuild after a family falls apart. You can survive being betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect you, but you cannot begin to heal until you stop hoping the people who hurt you will be the ones to heal you. I am no longer the girl standing in that driveway, shocked by her own family's cruelty. I am the woman who walked out of the wreckage and built something of her own. And for the first time in my life, I do not need anyone's permission to believe I deserve it. The necklace, I never wanted it. I never needed it. I only paid for it because I thought that was what a good sister was supposed to do. Now I know that being good does not mean letting people walk all over you. Being good means knowing when to stop. And I stopped. That mattered more than any necklace ever could. And if you are hearing this story and recognizing yourself in it, do not wait for your family to change. Do not wait for them to see what they have done. Start by seeing yourself. And then do not look away from that. An empty velvet box can be louder than the truth when people are already waiting to doubt you. That was the part I had to accept. Savannah did not need real proof. She only needed a family willing to confuse accusation with evidence. For years, my help had been invisible because everyone preferred it that way. The mortgage cleared itself. The tuition appeared. The groceries arrived. The necklace sparkled on her throat. And because no one saw the receipts, they forgot there had ever been a person behind them. But receipts have a quiet memory. They do not flatter the favorite child. And they do not punish the dependable one for finally speaking. They simply record what happened. That is why I stopped arguing and started documenting. I learned that truth does not always win by shouting first. Sometimes it wins by being kept carefully, line by line, until the lie has nowhere left to hide. Savannah used a necklace to make me look guilty. The records showed the real theft not of diamonds, but of trust, years of labor, and the right to be believed by my own family. Screenwriter Nguyen Van Chien.